Yo, what is good, you guys? Welcome to the video. Today I'm going to teach you how to play SNS Wand. I have created the ultimate hero build for Throne and Liberty. This SNS Wand build does massive curse damage, and it is also a tanky monstrosity. You can tank people 1v1, 1v2, 1v3, even 1v4. If they don't have enough crit, it is almost impossible to kill you if you are rotating your buffs. And the only thing that really kills you is CC. That being said, as long as you have Greed Seekers or you can get enough collision resistance, then you are pretty much virtually unkillable. I am only a week into this build, therefore I am still limit testing and breaking the grounds. However, I have completely dominated several forms of PvP with this build, so I figure it is time for me to release this for you. Let me go ahead and hop into the video. All right, you guys, so the majority of my damage from this build is coming from Cursed. I'm using Enchanting Time and Counter Barrier to increase my damage. And two variations you can use, it's actually like slightly different variations of the same build. So what you can do is you can use Piercing Strike to have more physical damage. That way you have more melee damage to counter people who have magic evasion, because we don't have insanely high hit. Now, in game, when I have perfect runes, perfect gear, archbox accessories, I probably won't need Piercing Strike because I will mostly hit most of my magic skills on the targets that I choose. However, to have versatile damage, I do have Piercing Strike. One thing you can do is take out the Piercing Strike specialization, and you can go more defensive with Clay Salvation. You can go for the weakening removal on Clay Salvation. And another thing you can do for pure burst damage for like this is really good versus bursting endurance users is you go Valorious Barrier to increase the overall curse damage. So I'm going to show you guys the rotation with Valorious Barrier because that is the most intricate one. The one with Clay Salvation and Piercing Strike, you're using Clay Salvation obviously to cleanse, and you're using Piercing Strike to just poke DPS that have magic evasion as you're keeping yourself alive. Piercing Strike is also really good for peeling because it reduces critical hit of the target hit. That being said, let me just go ahead and show you guys the main curse rotation. All right, so essentially what you're going to do to buff is counter barrier enchanting time, and then you're going to want a touch of despair, right? After you touch of despair once, you can glorious barrier into decaying touch. At that point, your next touch of despair should be coming off cooldown. You want to get another touch of despair into witching hour, curse explosion. That is a full like 2 touch of despair curse combo bomb. It's really good. Keep in mind you can also just pre-stack touch of despair and get 3 stacks and then go through the full combo again. However, this 2 stack is much quicker to get 2 stacks and then burst. However, the instant combo is just to buff counter barrier enchanting time. Then you want to touch of despair, decaying touch, witching hour into curse explosion. Let me show you guys what the full rotation looks like. We're going to touch of despair, Valorious Barrier. We're going to decaying touch, another touch of despair, witching hour, curse explosion. That was a 61k curse bomb, and it probably took us about 5 seconds. 5 seconds for 61k damage, you guys. Massive, massive, massive damage output from a Templar. Assuming you can hit all of your curses, this build has insanely good damage. That being said, the very, very quick rotation of this is to just fully buff and then drop our curses, witching our curse explosion. 32k damage. We do about half the damage because we're not stacking as many Touch of Despairs, and we also didn't include Valorious Barrier. I'm just showing you guys the damage output differential between fully buffing and just doing a quick combo. If you can get the full combo off, it is best. However, you can do good amount of damage just through a quick combo. That is the main damage rotation. So keep in mind, we want to keep counter barrier up as much as possible. However, if we are in danger of dying, what we're going to want to do is buffer our health with swift healing. Once we have our swift healing off cooldown, you're gonna want to use Fountain of Life. I really like using the range increase on Fountain of Life. However, you can also add the mana regen and the duration of Fountain of Life. Those are pretty good. We have some extra skill points with this build to kind of play around, depending upon like if we want to be a little bit more survivable or a little bit more damage focused. It just really depends on your playstyle. So we're buffering with Fountain of Life for self sustain, right? And then when we feel the slightest bit of danger, what you can do is you can Stalwart Bastion. Stalwart Bastion is best to use when you're fighting like 3 or more targets because essentially they'll do like 0 damage based on their cooldowns. After you've Stalwart Bastion, typically you want an Immortal Pride because Immortal Pride is going to boost your HP. One thing that I have done with this build is I'm not currently using the all defense spec of Immortal Pride, but keep in mind it is insanely good. It's just 5 skill points. It's not that heavy, but that defense increase on Immortal Pride is insanely good. There you go. That is the build, you guys. Hopefully you like the skill rotation. Hopefully you like the damage. Let me go ahead and show you guys the gear. Keep in mind, like I said, I'm only about a week and a half into this, so my mastery is not insanely high, but I am 5.4k, about 5.5k combat power. All of my gear is fully traded. I'm rocking 70 strength, 60 perception. I think it would be better to have more perception and strength. However, it's a little hard right now with the current accessories that I have. I'm currently using Clash of the Conqueror because I don't have the Cordy's necklace for the perception. But I'm using Blade of Fiendish Fortitude for the extra healing. Bulwark is nice for initiations. However, the extra hit on Blade of Fiendish plus the cooldown speed and the healing is giving us more utility as a weapon. I'm using Tevin's Grasp. Majority of the damage of this build does come from Tevin's Grasp. You can 100% run this build without Tevin's. You would use a more healing orientated wand. That way you have more support. However, Tevin's Wand is best in slot for this type of build because you're going to have so much extra damage on applying your curses. I am currently using magic heavy attack chance runes. However, I do believe that in most situations, hit is better. It's just when you heavy attack, it does massive damage. However, I'm not at a full in-game heavy attack build, so I'm not really getting the utilization of the heavy attack runes. So it just depends on how you want to play it out. But I do think in general the hit runes are better. But if you're going for endurance targets that you don't need to necessarily hit, the heavy attack is better. Okay. We're using 3-piece Vanguard for the fortitude, damage reduction, and endurance. So also getting collision res on the helmet. And then we're using 2-piece Warlord for the endurance buff. This endurance buff is giving not only giving endurance to myself, but it's also giving extra endurance to my party members. My party is also benefiting just from having me there. Using the hit cape, just because, like I said, we need as much hit as we possibly can with this build. We're not getting an insane amount of hit. However, we are getting a decent amount. Yeah. One thing you could do is go for the Warlord's helmet over the Auric helmet and then the Auric boots. That way you could have a slightly bit amount of hit. But I do like the Auric helmet for the collision res. That way, once I start building extra accessories, I will have more collision res. Heavy attack ring. You guys kind of get the point. Extra endurance on my bracelet, hit on my ring. This is placeholder gear. I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys the full version. The full version of this build looks closer to this, where I would have the Honor's Prominent Signet ring, and then the Cunning Ogre girdle. Like I said, what I would do is go for Collar of Nature's Wrath, with either max mana or mana regen, probably max mana. And then for the necklace, I would go for the Glacial Queen necklace. This is like full in game once we have best in slot everything. Um, those are 2 accessories that I would trade out, and then I might also go for a Paladin's belt. Not sure yet. But yeah, it would look closer to this with a 60-60-60 setup. Potentially might go to 50 fortitude. Got to play around with it, really see what I like. But you guys get the point. This Questlog will be linked in the description as well. Okay. Now let me go ahead and show you guys the. You see the skill passives that I'm currently running. I've played around with Noble Revival versus the having the extra cooldown reduction and morale boost. I prefer Noble Revival because it just gives me so much more healing, to be honest. I don't like running Templar without Noble Revival. Um, and then also you have Aegis Shield, which is like just absolutely necessary. It gives us so much damage reduction. Gerard's Patience is also very good because it increases CC resistance. So if you want to sacrifice some damage, what you could do is swap out Gerard, or I'm sorry, not damage, but some healing. You can swap out Gerard's Patience for Vampiric Contract, and that will give you more CC resistance. As you don't really necessarily need Vampiric Contract, it is useful. It's definitely useful for passive healing. That way you have more sustain. However, the collision res is sometimes just better in general. Keep in mind my mastery is pretty low, as I'm still leveling up my weapons. Once it gets higher, you guys can see my mastery setup in the quest log. However, I will be going for Blessed Haste to decrease healing skill cooldown. And then after Blessed Haste, I'm probably going to go for Nightmare for this setup. Once I'm closer to 130. You don't really want to go for Divine Choice because it decreases curse damage, even though it increases healing. We still need that curse damage, so we're kind of stuck going for Blessed Haste and then Nightmare as a Templar. And then for my SNS, currently going for the increase in all endurance. It's really solid. And then it's going to be between Resistance and Wisdom's Path. Really got to see how it plays out. But Getting to 60 wisdom is definitely a possibility with this build, as I've showed you guys towards our in-game build. So you really got to play around with it. But what you guys can see as of right now in the build is our 90/90 mastery. I don't want to fully spec out into 130 because there's still a lot of theory crafting I need to do. However, for 90/90, you guys can kind of see my loadout here with Blessed Haste and with Life Sparking. Those are my masteries. Those are my skills, my passives. That is my gear, my skill rotation. Hopefully you guys like the build and the video. Thanks so much for watching. Keep in mind we are recruiting healers, Templars, and exceptional DPS to my guild on Ivory. If you would like to join and compete against some of the best guilds in the game, please hit me up on Discord. Thanks so much for watching the video. Peace and love, you guys.